And the masters of the universe, the most powerful man in the universe,
defender of the secrets of Castle
Power
Grayskull.
of Grayskull.
For 22 years, Mattel could not bring He-Man back. They tried it with a cartoon, a Sony movie, Kevin Smith, and Netflix. Every attempt failed. The June 2026 He-Man movie is the first successful relaunch in 2 decades, and Mattel did not make it. They handed it to Amazon. Here's what most people get wrong about why He-Man kept failing. They think the audience aged out and stopped caring. They think live-action toy adaptations are just hard to pull off. Or they blame Hollywood for chronic creative turnover, too many directors, too many script rewrites. All of that sounds reasonable. None of it is the real reason. The real reason He-Man kept failing for 22 years is that Mattel kept trying to relaunch a toy line. The audience for He-Man had stopped being children. The kids who loved He-Man in 1985 were now 45 years old. They wanted a film. Mattel kept commissioning toy commercials. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how Mattel burned 4 separate comebacks, why Sony spent 13 years on a movie that never got made, why Netflix wrote off $30 million before walking away, and what the June 2026 release tells us about every other classic property being dragged out of retirement right now. The story of how the original $400 million empire died in 1988 has been documented before, including in detail on this channel. This is the story of what happened next. By 1988, Masters of the Universe was over. The $400 million empire collapsed in a single fiscal year, killed by the same overshipment and bonus-driven retail decisions that had built it. For most of the 1990s, Mattel barely thought about He-Man at all. The company was focused on Barbie, Hot Wheels, and the Fisher-Price acquisition completed in 1993. Masters of the Universe sat dormant alongside other dead Mattel properties from earlier decades. Inside the company, He-Man was a line item in the IP catalog, not a strategic priority. That changed in 2001, when collector demand and a successful reissue program convinced Mattel that a full revival might work. In 2002, Mattel decided to try again. They partnered with Mike Young Productions to relaunch He-Man as an animated series on Cartoon Network's Toonami block, and commissioned a new toy line marketed internally as 200X. They brought back original Filmation writers Larry DiTillio and Michael Reeves to write the show. The animation was cleaner. The story arcs were tighter. The character designs by the Four Horsemen sculpting studio were widely praised by collectors. By every creative measure, the new show was an upgrade on the original. None of it mattered. The toy line did exactly what the original had done in 1987. Mattel produced wave after wave of repainted He-Man and Skeletor variants instead of expanding the rest of the cast. Distribution to retail was uneven and disorganized. Collectors and parents could not find the figures they wanted, while shelves filled with figures nobody wanted. The vehicles and playsets that drove the highest margins in the original line were either delayed or never produced. By mid-2003, sales were collapsing. In January 2004, Cartoon Network canceled the show midway through its second season. The exact same mistake had killed the property twice in 17 years. After 200X, Mattel stopped trying to make He-Man content themselves. In 2007, they sold the live-action film rights to Sony Pictures. Sony spent the next 13 years failing. Directors signed on and walked away. John Stevenson from Kung Fu Panda, John M. Chu from Crazy Rich Asians, Baekhyun Ji from Terminator Salvation, David Goyer from the Dark Knight trilogy. Each one rewrote the script, each one left. The scripts that did get written cycled through every possible tone. A grim biblical reimagining, a space opera in the style of Star Wars, a self-aware comedy, a straight superhero origin story. Each approach had a champion at Sony for 6 months. Then a new executive arrived, the script went back into the pile, and the cycle restarted. Noah Centineo was cast as He-Man in 2019 and exited the project. An estimated dozen writers cycled through. Sony spent the entire 2010s trying to figure out how to make a He-Man movie and produced exactly nothing. In January 2022, Mattel pulled the rights back. By that point, Masters of the Universe had been in active development for 16 consecutive years and had produced 1 canceled cartoon and 0 films. The property still had brand value. The kids who had been 6 in 1985 were now in their mid-40s. Exactly the demographic Hollywood was begging for. Mattel could not figure out how to reach them. So, they sold the rights to Netflix. Netflix was supposed to be the safe choice. They had already commissioned Kevin Smith to write a continuation animated series called Masters of the Universe Revelation, which aired in July 2021. It was meant to test audience appetite for adult-oriented He-Man storytelling. Smith made one decision in episode 1 that defined the entire response to the show. He killed He-Man. The first episode opens with a cataclysmic battle that leaves both He-Man and Skeletor dead and Eternia stripped of magic. He-Man is then absent from most of the first half of the season. The story shifts to Teela. The audience that had specifically come back for a He-Man show was told in the first 30 minutes that they would mostly be watching other characters. The reaction was immediate. Revelation finished its first part with a 38% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes and failed to chart in Netflix's own weekly top 10. Fans accused the show of being a bait and switch. Smith publicly told critics to grow up. The fan reaction was not about animation quality. It was about a structural decision to sideline the hero in his own sequel, a decision the audience had not been warned about and would not forgive. Netflix proceeded with the live-action film anyway. Kyle Allen was cast. The Nee brothers were attached to direct. The production budget came in over $200 million. Netflix's cap was $150. In July 2023, Netflix walked away. The $30 million already spent in development was written off. In November 2023, Amazon MGM Studios bought the rights. Travis Knight, who had directed Bumblebee, signed on. Chris Butler rewrote the screenplay from scratch. Nicholas Galitzine was cast as Prince Adam. Idris Elba, Kristen Wiig, Jared Leto, and Camila Mendes joined the cast. Principal photography ran from January through June of 2025 in London. The production budget landed between $180 and $200 million, comfortably above the cap that had killed the project at Netflix. The reason Amazon greenlit at that number when Netflix would not is structural. Netflix measures film economics by per-title profitability for a streaming subscriber business. Amazon does not. Amazon Prime Video is a customer retention engine for a much larger company. A high-profile genre tentpole drives Prime memberships, ad revenue on the streaming layer, and brand presence in international markets where Amazon competes directly with Netflix. The arithmetic that killed the project at one company made the same project viable at the other. The crucial detail is who was paying. Amazon, not Mattel, is the company that finally made a Masters of the Universe film happen. To understand why that distinction matters, you have to understand what changed inside Mattel itself. In April 2018, after years of declining toy sales and 4 failed chief executives in less than a decade, the Mattel board hired Ynon Kreiz. Kreiz did not come from the toy industry. He came from Endemol Shine, a global film and television production company. He looked at Mattel's portfolio of 7 decades of intellectual property and reached one conclusion. Mattel was not a toy company that occasionally made films. Mattel was a film company that had been operating in disguise as a toy company for 40 years. He launched Mattel Films later that year with a single operating principle: license the properties to A-list filmmakers with the experience to make actual films. Step out of the way. The first deal under that strategy was Greta Gerwig's Barbie. It earned over $1.5 billion in 2023 and became the highest-grossing film in Mattel's history. The June 5, 2026. He-Man release is the second test of the strategy. It took 22 years, 4 failed comebacks, roughly $40 million in wasted Sony and Netflix development costs, 3 different studios, and one CEO who finally understood that Mattel could not make this film themselves. Mattel got there by giving up control. There's a version of this story where Mattel learned from 1988 and ran a disciplined comeback. We do not live in that version. We live in the one where the same company made the same mistake 4 times in 22 years, and the property only came back when Mattel stopped trying to manage it. The pattern is simple. Mattel always treated He-Man as a toy line. The audience for He-Man stopped being children 3 decades ago, until Mattel admitted that nothing they made was going to work. We will know in June whether Amazon understood what Mattel did not. Drop a comment below. Which of Mattel's failed He-Man reboots did you actually watch? And which one were you still holding out hope for?